Nice.
Welcome
We'll
to
do it on a
the
Friday.
September 5 meeting of the Economic Development Commission. We got a couple people here who have to leave by 9, so I'd like to get as much done as we can before they leave. Good to see you, Bill. Got your text first thing this morning. Before we get to the, I'll announce that we do have a quorum here, so the meeting is officially called to order. I have a couple housekeeping items I wanted to touch base before we get to the minutes. First of all, I wanted to let everybody know, in case you haven't been watching your city council meetings, that Anna is now a regular member of she was approved by the city council.
Scratch out alternate.
I will fix that. I will fix that.
Which means that we do have, she's filling Everett's term, so her term will go until October of last year. Because she was an alternate, that is now an open position, so we're working on trying to find some people for that. If you know anybody, send me the names, I'll reach out to them. As it turns out, October 1st is also sort of the end of our membership year, even though it's not the city's fiscal year. And there are a couple people whose terms will lapse, although under the city ordinances, even if you don't apply, you remain a member until your replacement has been named and approved by the city council. So, but nonetheless, those people whose terms are expiring should have, in Sarah's case, have or will receive a letter from the city clerk reminding you of your need to submit a reapplication. So I would encourage you to check your mail and get that in as soon as possible. I would also say that Jen has decided that her term also ends on October 1st. She has decided she's not going to continue for more time, so I want to just recognize this will be her last meeting because our next meeting is after October 1st, and I just want to thank her for her service, and she's been a member since 2023, but I also want to just give her my own special appreciation for the efforts she made in pulling together last January's retreat and doing such a great job of keeping us cats on the same.
Sure.
If any of the people whose terms expire decide they do not want to you still have to send an email or a letter to the city clerk saying that, and when you expect that you stop attending meetings. You don't need to actually have to resign. You just have to indicate you're not going to renew. If you decide to do that, would you send a copy to me just so I know what our status is? And then the other thing Sean and I have figured out, or I did when I was looking at the ordinance dealing with membership qualifications requirements, is that we are supposed to keep track of absences. At the end of every year, Sean has to notify the clerk's office of what the attendance has been. It's like, grade school with the little photos on the sheet, what the attendance has been. But we differentiate between excused attendance and just failure to show up. You are supposed to notify me if you're not going to be able to attend, so I can, or you can notify Sean as well. But we can keep track, and at the end of the year, we will make in our report a list of what the non-excused have been, because that's really what the clerk's office is looking for. So, any questions concerning those housekeeping items? Hearing none, I would next go to the approval of the minutes of our August 1st meeting and entertain a motion to do so. Anybody?
So moved.
Thank you, Jen.
Bueller? Who seconded it? Phil second. Any corrections or additions, deletions? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor of approving the minutes, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I'll abstain since I was not here for that meeting. Next, ask Sean to give us the report from his office.
Great. I will go through this quickly, but thank you, Chair Wilson. A couple things. I'm monitoring kind of the macro level issues, and we all see them out there daily, but we're hearing it locally. The number one issue for our businesses is uncertainty stemming from tariffs, inflation, present inflation, future expected inflation, immigration, workforce, civil unrest. It's all out there. So what the twist is, not the twist, but what we're hearing, and I've heard this on the ground here, is that a lot of businesses have been in a holding pattern. That is no longer an option. So they basically have to determine what can I control, what can I not control, and move forward. So that's kind of just an overarching issue. It's across the country, but it's happening here as well. Just wanted to share that with you. At the regional level, the state of New Hampshire has identified reduction in cross-border shipments of goods, specifically manufactured inputs and finished products with our neighbors to the north in Canada. So they're putting together a strategy to open additional communication channels. It's not being labeled as a trade mission, but more of just looking to establish or strengthen the communication channels to determine what can be done to protect these historic relationships. So more to come on that. That's coming out of the governor's office. You may know that Portsmouth Naval Shipyard is presenting their economic impact study next Wednesday here in City Council chambers. So that's Wednesday at 1:30. It's a public meeting if you'd like to attend. You may also recall that they produce their numbers at least a year behind, maybe two. They're going to be presenting their full year 2024 economic impact. And I'll just remind you that their full year 2023 was $1.5 billion to the local economy. And I don't believe it's really slowed down, although they had some hiring hiccups. A bit closer to Junkins Ave, ACL will be here 5 more times between this Saturday and October 4th. We've got 3 Saturdays and I think a Thursday, and maybe a Tuesday. That is going well. I reached out to them. They came back. No issues, no concerns. We have a new retailer coming to town. Soft as a grape. Anybody heard of that? Yeah.
Down on the Cape?
They're big down the Cape. Yeah, the Cape Cod. It's apparel, and they're going into the fat face space. Fat face on Congress. Okay. They're excited to come up here. We recently heard from a company that maybe you haven't heard of, Tanovi, which is at 1 Kate Street out in the West End. They were identified as the fastest growing company in New Hampshire by Inc. 5000. So they were pretty excited about that. They've just been kind of doing their thing, and they're planning maybe a ribbon cutting on the 16th. I can let you all know when that's going to happen. They'd like to have the governor there, the mayor, others. But they basically produce, what do they do? They're in the medical space, but they build and sell cellular connected health devices that help doctors and healthcare companies monitor patients remotely. So it's a small group, it's very technical, but they're excited to be kind of out there. Of course, the first question I asked, have you joined the chamber yet? So hopefully you've heard from them.
We're in process.
In process, great. That they want to be seen, that's where you got to be. The last thing is just in terms of hospitality and tourism, maybe Ben can add to this, but basically our businesses are going to transition from their summer help to whatever the fall is, right? So we'll see how that goes. And so city projects, you heard, we're in the home stretch for paving Islington Street. The Hanover Garage is in the home stretch. I did hear that we are going to make more monthly passes available at the Hanover Garage now that we're back to, I'll say, full capacity. And the Founder Garage is a wait list for monthly passes. So if you have questions, anybody that you out there, feel free to send them to me. I'll get them some answers. The below ground work at Vaughan Mall will begin in earnest next week. Cleared, it's gonna take care of all those utilities, and we'll see how quickly we can get that done. But as you all know, it has to
Just
be
want to
done.
make a note about the Von Mall work.
Yes.
For our staging area, we need to, I will say, absorb or take offline a handful of parking spaces in the Worth lot. So you'll see signage and information about that coming up. That'll be about 3 to 4 months.
Right, thank you. Maplewood Bridge, I think, is still on target for a November,
End of October.
Okay.
Yep.
early opening, opening. There's a lot of commercial development going on. I've been pulling together some stats for our finance group, but just there are the projects that are not complete, that are in process or approved and digging or about to be. There's 6 projects total. Of that, there are 471 market rate units under construction. There's 5 or 6 commercial spaces. They're all basically that model of the mixed-use commercial on the first floor, and then residential above. There's another hotel, so we've got the Homewood Suites by Hilton, which is open over by the Foundry, and there's a 181-room hotel planned there for the north end. So there'll be another hotel coming to town. And if you didn't see it today, there's a second co-living space has been proposed by Mr. McNabb. So there are now 2 locations that he's proposing co-living space. So the point is, housing continues to be a top issue and addressed, and hopefully that's going to be something that we're going to see some diversification in offerings. Business employees. That's what I have, Tom.
Sarah?
Has there been any change with the economic uncertainty around like requests for or usage of the foreign trade zones that are established in the city?
I have not gotten any. They talked about it at the state level. They did a webinar. So no, I feel like there's not a ton of that type. More of the manufacturing happens in other parts of the state where there's things coming in. Like I got a call one time. I got a call from Rochester a few months ago. Someone bringing it into Rochester from China going to Canada. So I referred them to my colleague in Rochester.
I recall from a few years ago that I believe there was one established either at Pease or at the port in order to avoid
Yep.
tariffs. So I'm not sure if that's something that businesses are broadly aware of if they're in the manufacturing space, but with the uncertainty you mentioned, it might be an opportunity to make sure that people are aware that those are available.
Will do. Thank you.
Other questions? I have one question, Sean. It may not be on your radar yet, but has there been any discussion yet about trying to get on top of what Torrington's going to build out at Newington? $500 million of.
Not in my office. I mean, just what I read was that they've got a preliminary plan in front of the Newington folks, and yes. So no.
I don't know if that's something that this group should be looking at, but I think the potential for, $500 million worth of commercial space without any residential could have a significant impact on the downtown. I just wonder if there's a way we can establish a line of communication or something.
I will
with them,
poke around. Let
We
you know
do
what I
have line
find.
of communication, and the CEO of Torrington is a Portsmouth resident, so perhaps we can invite him here as a guest when he's ready to share what's going on.
Yeah, well, if he's already started with the Newington, regulatory process, then he must be willing to go public with some of it. So,
Right.
so maybe we can talk about getting him to come in a future meeting. Any other questions or comments for Sean?
Did we get a new renter or tenant for Hearth Place, that big place?
I haven't heard anything.
Ann, do you know?
I don't know who it is.
But there is. There is.
Sounds like there's something in the works, but it hasn't been.
Something in the works not announced, but very soon, like opening very soon.
Wow.
It's just a big place to be empty.
Big place to fill.
Yes, it's a big place to lease.
Stay tuned.
Okay,
Thanks.
and I'll give you the floor to talk about social.
Social
Districts.
districts. Our working group is myself, Ben Van Camp, and Anna Howard, and we have put together, I'm sort of calling it What We Know. And we've done a lot of digging and a lot of talking to people to put together a piece of what we know about social districts, and I think what we know is fairly different than what people are assuming a social district looks like. all got the email with the document, but I'll just do a really quick run through and either of you chime in because we've all had conversations. The state statute is already in effect. That went into effect September 5th. But what it allows is cities and towns now are able to put it on their general election ballot, which for us will be November 4th. To make that happen, either city council votes to put it on the ballot or 5% of your voters put together a petition. That would be 900 people. I don't think that's happening, but it is on the council agenda, and that will be discussed at your council meeting on Monday. Personally, I would expect it to be put on the ballot, but we'll see what you all do with that on Monday with your discussion. What we're unclear about is what the state is going to require. The state will have the overarching rules and regs about the social district, and then the city can decide how they would implement that here. So there seems to be confusion. Ben had a conversation with the Liquor Commission and with Bill Boyd, the primary sponsor. I had a conversation with Mike Summers from the New Hampshire Lodging and Restaurant Association. And it seems like they're unclear whether it would look like, and I'll just throw North Carolina out as the example, and they call it a sip and stroll district there where you have your cocktail. You can just walk around the streets with your drink, and there's signage telling you where the sidewalk ends of where you have to stop and not go any further with your drink. There are those at the state level that say that's not what it's going to look like here. It would be something cordoned off, something more restricted than that. I think you were kind of hearing it both ways from the Liquor Commission. If you want to expound on what.
Yeah, the conversation with the Liquor Commission, and I think I want to re-emphasize that these rules are still being shaped. So who knows what the final product will be. But what he was describing to me was much like you would have at like a festival or something like that, where it's a cordoned off space that's like delineated by some sort of physical barrier, a rope or a fence or something like that, that really kind of made a kind of corral, if you will. Whereas in other states, as Ann mentioned, it's like, a sign on a telephone pole on the side of the sidewalk saying, no alcohol past this point. So there seems to be some differences there, which would really impact, like I talked to the folks in Littleton, New Hampshire, and they're considering their entire Main Street could potentially be a social district. I don't know how you corral a Main Street with two-way traffic and all these side streets and things like that. I just don't see how that's physically possible. So there's really a lot we don't know, and I think until those rules come out from the state, we won't really have a clear understanding of how this could be implemented locally and what that looks like.
And then from Mike Summers at the New Hampshire Lodging and Restaurant Association, he pretty much said the same thing that Ben is saying from the Liquor Commission, but he's saying that he knows how the rulemaking tends to work at the state level and at the Liquor Commission, and he wouldn't expect to see a firm set of rules till spring because they wouldn't expect anyone would need it until spring, even though we've had our own social district type space in the Hearth Courtyard after the Christmas parade. So it's possible this could potentially go on the ballot and look for voters to vote yes or no without having any idea how this would be implemented. That said, the city can always set their own rules, even if the state says, well, you can walk up and down the street. The city can say, no, that's not what we're looking for, and they could delineate areas. You can not only delineate an area, but you can be very, very tight on time of day, day of week. You can set everything. It can be a special event, like if there was some sort of special event on Pleasant Street, where Pleasant Street is closed off, there's 6 restaurants that feed into that would be barricaded off. You could, for one afternoon, have a special event on Pleasant Street and have those 6 restaurants benefit. When you do something like that, Ben and I have had this discussion, and Ben kind of coined it winners and losers. You will always have losers whose restaurants are not within a social district and will never be within a social district. There's places The kitchen comes to mind. They're never gonna be within a social district, no matter what. So they would never be a beneficiary of a social district. So there's always gonna be the pluses and minuses on that for businesses. We did reach out to businesses. For the most part, restaurant owners that I've talked to have all said just what we're saying, not enough information to have an opinion. So I hate to be so vague. We did brainstorm if it went on the ballot, if it was passed, and then it came back to us to say, well, how would we implement this here? There are some spaces in Portsmouth that are pretty well suited to it. So we listed those in this document: Vaughan Mall, Commercial Alley, special events on Pleasant Street. I thought after we put this together, when we barricade the downtown for the Christmas parade and leave that open for a few hours, those few hours could be a social district for those few hours after the Christmas parade, because it's barricaded. And then we have not exactly public domain at Hearth Courtyard and Port Walk that also would be well suited. So there are places you could put a very highly controlled, cordoned off area for a social district. So I'm kind of open that for discussion if anybody wants to throw in.
So, and thinking about this, we kind of came to this realization that we can't really form an opinion because we just don't have enough information. So if you ask me today, are social districts good for businesses? I'd be like, maybe. But then I boiled it down a little bit more. The question in front of the community today, this fall, is: do we want to have the option of social districts? We're not going to know the times, the location, the whatever's, all the details. The only thing we're asking this fall is, do we want to have that as an option? And when I think of it like that, options are good, right? We don't have to implement it. We don't have to do it. If we goes on the ballot and it gets approved, then it comes back to the city council, I assume, to decide what those parameters are, times, locations, like all this and that. And they could say, you know what, this it's great to have this option. Maybe we can use it for this particular special events and things like that. But we don't see this as a 365 days a year kind of thing. So I think that's where the chamber's kind of landing right now, is that we would like to have the option to do it. So we would support this moving forward, but I mean, until we know specifics, it's hard to get really enthusiastic about a plan that doesn't exist.
I should throw in too, one of the smaller towns in North Carolina set up a social district where it was their whole business district. It was signaged off, but the social district was only open for walking around with a beverage on Saturday afternoons from 12 to 5. And all of their restaurants opened at 5. So their restaurants opened early for like a cocktail service. People got beverages, walked into the retail and spent money in retail. And then when it was time for their dinner hour to start, then that district basically was no longer available for walking around with a drink, and everyone needed to go in the restaurant. So, I mean, that's a interesting way that they found to enliven their economics of their downtown, because they had a not very busy Saturday afternoons in downtown, and that brought money into their downtown. So you can get really creative with the parameters you put on it.
Bill?
Couple questions. This will be enabling legislation at the state level, and then we would have to vote on whether we want to implement it? Is that, okay.
So the enabling legislation at the state level is already happened.
Okay.
That's
It goes into effect today.
Okay.
Today,
So then-
that's true.
Yeah, and then the community has to say, we want this, yes or no. And then from there, and that's really all it says on the ballot. Are you in favor of having social districts in your community? And then it's up to city council to figure out what that looks like and when that looks like. And all
Almost in the
those
same
details.
way that we fashioned outdoor dining guidelines, if you will.
Yeah,
So that was going to be my follow-up comment, is with all the work and enforcement or logistics that goes with outdoor dining, how does this supersede, supplement all of that? And I know I'm hearing we can't answer that today. It'll be sort of at our discretion, but I'd say that's sort of the biggest piece. And did we want, is there a benefit to having sort of free roaming and a lot more access beyond that? I mean, we don't have the sleepy Saturday afternoon problem, maybe
No,
certain
we
parts
don't.
of the year.
We have a sleepy Monday or Tuesday problem, so maybe.
Yeah, okay.
Andy?
Are there any other examples closer than the Mid-Atlantic states, like states that have similar, seasonal winter temperatures, like kind of thing that we can point to? There's a interest, if people haven't been to the Tuscan Village in Salem, there's a really interesting area that on 3 out of 4 sides you can buy alcohol, and there's a turf area in the middle that looks like a social district to me.
They use
No, that's
it as-
exactly it. That was sort of the test case for this.
And that's
Oh, okay.
kind
It's private property, so it's
Property.
they don't have to
Right.
follow these kind of rules, but that's exactly what the Liquor Commission pointed to and said, yeah, we worked with Tuscan Village to sort of pilot this and to see how it went. And so if you're familiar with that, then you know exactly what the state Liquor Commission is thinking about.
Okay. I would encourage people to take a field trip if you have time.
Next meeting?
It's like a New England anomaly.
And that's Joe, keep in mind, that's Joe Farrow, who
Yeah.
has 2 restaurants here, one of which would be pretty easily situated for putting into the Hearth. So if Hearth was a social district or whatever.
Right.
Thank you. I was gonna say, one of the things as we start to dive into this, and again, it's gonna, as everyone has said here, we're gonna dive into it more depending on what happens in the ballot, right? If it fails in the ballot, then that's kind of the end of the conversation for at least another, 2 years. And then if the community says, hey, we wanna bring this back up, we'll rediscuss it. But I do think it's worth noting this group has, but for the public, is to look at some of the other communities around the country that have done it. I think, at least online, a lot of the conversation is like, oh, this is going to be Key West, this is going to be New Orleans. But I think a city who, in my opinion, has done it really well is Savannah. Within their 21 blocks of their downtown, you kind of can literally, some of these restaurants have a to-go window, and you can just get a glass of wine, and it's in an aluminum cup with like the city seal on it, and you have to purchase it, those cups through the city, and or through the state, and there's kind of a revenue stream there. But I want to make sure that the public is aware that there are plenty of not plenty, but there's at least over a dozen communities in the country that do a program like this and do it really well. So I just hope that, if this gets on the ballot, the community can really inform themselves of what this could look like to both extremes, right? And also, as touched on by the working group, what the state laws are looking, or the commission are looking kind of reel it in,
So we've had some long conversations with John Gollum. John owned Poco's for, I'm not even sure, 30
And he's in Savannah now, he
years.
retired down in Savannah.
And he was on the police commission here, and I said to him, I feel like he understands alcohol behavior because he witnessed it for decades here. And he now lives full-time inside of the social district in Savannah. So he has sent me volumes of information. And he is also right now, their social district started in 2021, and it expanded this spring to a little more geography. He's collecting some data from restaurants that he's associated with to see how their economics changed and how their time of day busy part changed when the social districts came in. He's going to be here in Portsmouth for almost a month starting mid-September. So
great.
we'll have some sit-downs with John. He's willing to sit down with business owners. He's willing to pretty much do anything that we would like to do to pick his brain on how it's working in Savannah. So he's kind of an interesting point of view. Savannah is a much larger
Your
city.
city, yeah, we don't have to worry about the
They're
woo.
like 120,000 people, so it's a much larger city, but it is historic, it's on the water, it's a tourism hub, so it does share a lot of the same things that Portsmouth does.
Couple comments. From what I've picked up from just talking with people about that, people have all sorts of visions of either this is going to be great or it's going to be a disaster and take your kids off the street. But there are some guardrails in the legislation that I don't think at a granular level people aren't really aware of. So some people think they'll be able to just get a six-pack and walk from their house into the social district. Can't do that, you know. You can only buy from existing licensees who abut the social district. And when you buy from them, you can bring it out into the social district. You cannot bring it in a store. You cannot bring it in another licensee that you didn't buy it from. So if you go into XYZ and you get a beer, you can walk around the social district, but you can't take that beer and go into a store or anything, because that's not part of the social district.
Oh, I didn't see the not into the store part.
I think it depends on how the social district is defined. So if the social district, my understanding is that if the store is inside the social district, that's up to the store, whether just like you see stores with no ice cream signs, it's kind of like that where, they're allowed in some and not. So it depends on if it depends, I think.
Does that come from your conversation with liquor enforcement officer?
Well, so that conversation started with, very tightly controlled, and then we started talking about the example of Littleton, and he was very familiar with Littleton, and he's like, oh, I didn't realize. So then he kind of softened his stance a little bit and said, well, if it was an entire, downtown core, it would be able to do that. So, like I said, I think they're still figuring it out. I don't think anything's set in stone yet. We're still figuring this out from the state level.
Okay. Other questions? So what are the next steps?
September 8th, the council will take up the question of whether to put it on the ballot. There'll be a public hearing, I think, at the September 24th city council meeting to gather comment. And if that is decided, and then it would go on the ballot.
Okay. Well, in terms of my conversation with the mayor on this subject a couple months ago, is that he wanted something from us essentially before the election, so basically by mid-October. And I think he was specifically wanted to get a sense as to what the business community, on the assumption we're representative of the business community, thought about this concept. I'm not sure how he's going to use that report, but it was important to him that we have something for him before the election, a couple weeks before the election. So, just a minute, Phil. So I'm in terms of your actions, your plans from here forward, what's your working group thinking?
I think next is working with Ben and the chamber to put together a survey that would go to the business community, much like we did for the 15-minute parking. Something short, tight, little bit of descriptor of what we see happening, what the knowledge is that we have, and then get some opinions. And that could be a pretty fast turnaround once we put the survey together.
And again, it's hard to ask them when we don't know exactly the constraints of it. Every time I talk to business owners, they say, will there be more police? Then it's okay. If not, that might be a problem. So it depends is the answer a lot that I hear.
Well, I think the legislation envisions that the city will be involved in the regulation. This won't be simply something regulated by the Liquor Commission. I think the city has to adopt the zone, they have to adopt the rules, et cetera. But, is there anything else you want from this group before you come back to us next month?
I don't think so.
The only thing I'd share is that Concord is like a couple steps ahead. So the same time that our city council is going to debate this, they're having their public information meeting where the public will comment. So I think we plan to watch that YouTube video after the fact and kind of get some notes and see what was asked there and what the thoughts were. And that may be a nice little lesson for our September 20 whatever meeting to see what might come from the community.
Phil?
I was just going to suggest of the group, it sounds like we have an opportunity to gain some actual data from John over the course of the
Savannah.
month, so.
Yes.
I would say that's really meaningful in terms of the mayor's interest and data or information from a business perspective. If we could, as much of that could be captured and come back in something in October, maybe we take a vote on what we know
He
based
was
on the
also
survey.
having conversations with the aldermen in Savannah, which is their city council.
Yeah.
To see what was the process, because they did start with a pilot project there, it was very small, and he's gonna kind of outline that whole process for us then of how they dipped their toe in and did it successfully.
It sounds like there are 3 asks maybe at the October meeting for the social district working group. One is to poll the business sentiment on whether, to Ben's point, they would like the option of having these. 2 would be a distillation of whatever comes up at the state meeting on the social districts. And 3 would be John's specific perspective, being a former Portsmouth restaurateur and living in a social district, as to his perspective on how this might impact the city. And then from those 3 things, I think we could distill a position from the EDC to get back to the mayor and the city council on the economic impact of this proposal.
I don't know if we'll have the information from the state by then, but if we do, we'll,
If available.
yeah,
You mean in the regulations?
yeah, the
Yeah, I'm
They're,
pretty
they're
sure.
thinking spring for that.
They have to go through a public hearing process.
When is the public hearing? I thought I heard it was in end of September.
Oh, no,
That's Concord.
that-
Oh, okay.
that's the city of Concord. Sorry, not state government.
Ah,
Concord,
got it.
City of
Oh,
Concord.
right, City of Concord.
Sorry.
Yeah. I thought you meant the state was having like,
No,
good
sorry.
timing.
The city of Concord and their social, they're having the same kind
Okay.
of conversation we're having.
Well,
And they're just
scratch
a
the
couple weeks
state
ago.
part of it then.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, this is going to be sort of a chicken or the egg with the decision-making on this, because truly, the regulatory, the process of creating regulations is, in my experience, has been.
It's an interesting scenario. Have there been precedents for this where the state has put things on the ballot to say, do you want the option of doing this without having clarity around what it actually means? From a ballot measure perspective, I'm not aware of any.
No, and in fact, the legislation specifically says what the question is gonna be. It's not like the city creates its
Yeah.
own. But if this and that, it simply says, are you in favor of?
It's like with the Keno question, you know what Keno is, so when
Yeah.
it shows up every election, you know what you're getting into, so. It's an
Is there a
interesting.
way to make it clear on the ballot that voting yes doesn't instantly mean our whole downtown is a social district? Because that is the assumption that people are making, and that's not necessarily what it would look like. Maybe it's the phrasing of how it goes on the ballot, which would be something maybe we could have.
That's baked into the legislation.
Yeah.
What goes on the ballot?
Oh, that's
I
very
don't know if we can have like a separate, here's a summary.
That would just come out of the public.
Correct, and I think what my expectation would be Monday, we will at least have the start of a, because I think that question will come up. And I think we'll have the start of a response from our legal department. Especially, our counsel, Jane Farini, who deals with a lot of the legislation. I would assume that we will have some, in the Liquor Commission, we'll have some type of beginning of legal understanding and explanation of what, per the legislation, how the ballot question has to be written.
Okay.
You could have a voter guide of some sort.
Yeah.
You can't distribute it at the poll, but you can.
No, but ahead of time, and particularly in the public, the next council meeting when there's
Yeah, public
public input.
yeah.
Okay. Anything else on this subject? All right, so then I think we know what your plans are, and if you need any more input in the interim, just let me know and we'll ask for it. Okay, Andy, talk about.
Sure, I'll hop in on the master plan working group. So that working group consists of the gentlemen on either side of me, Phil and Bob. We have a first draft document of what I'm calling a goal kickoff list. It's a lot of resources that have gone into this, starting in my mind with our January workshop. Sarah put together a wonderful heat map, and also summary list of commissioners' feedback, and then
Does anybody need a copy of what he's talking about?
I'll take one if you have a physical.
No, we haven't.
Yeah, I'm looking at it on the screen here. But also there was a poll put out that through this commission that also went into the goal plan document. So one of the things that the group is going to work on next is so there's 4 goals now. There may be more, there may be less. So that's number 1 task. Number 2 task is coming up with recommended initiatives that the city should take, and then how do you measure those initiatives? I think that's gonna be kind of the more heavy lifting piece of the group. So we'll be working on this between now and the next meeting, and in the end, it's gonna be one document versus all those resources I just mentioned. Right now, we're looking at a lot of different sources. So that's the update. I'm not really sure, other than us getting together again, I'm not really sure that there's anything required from the commission on that, other than if you have ideas to put forward on that. We've kind of already done that commission information gathering stage here. But that's the update.
Questions, Randy? Okay.
Speaking of the master plan, I just want to bill on Monday, September 15th at 5:30 in the Levinson Room at the library will be the first visioning public session. It'll be the first chance that the public at large gets to see Hugh Teal and Ann Weidman as community organizer in action. And it'd be great if we had some representation from the commission. I'll certainly be there, planning staff will be there, Sean will be there. FYI.
It's a big, deep presentation. Try to be there. Is it?
What's the date of that
I
again?
think we're taping it, it's not going to be aired live.
Okay,
5:30.
so but it'll be taped.
It'll be recorded.
15th at 5:30.
Yeah.
There will be refreshments.
Well, now you're talking.
Social districting.
Indy, can I just ask on item 2, the goal kickoff list, when we talk about infrastructure, are we including technology infrastructure? Or are we just looking at physical infrastructure?
I think that word was meant to capture that, but
I think
We're
with
gonna need a
AI
note of it,
and
yeah.
the nature of work changing, we really have to consider what the impact might be. As part of our master plan, or we'll be missing a huge item.
I like that.
Okay. Anything you want to add, Ann, on the master planning process?
Just that I'm pretty impressed with what I'm seeing coming out of UTL.
Yeah.
Good group.
We had a call last night with the Master Plan Advisory Committee. I don't know if you were on that, Bob, or not, but
No, I couldn't make it.
and essentially they did sort of preliminary rollout of the presentation they're going to make on the 15th, and lots of graphics, lots of history. That I think it's going to be if you can make it, it'll be a worthwhile your time just to listen to how much they've already started. I'd encourage any of us who are available to try to make that meeting. I think it's going to be.
It will look a lot like the Market Square Master Plan meeting, where there'll be a room full of easels and ways for you to give input on different things. You're not going to be sitting in a chair quietly watching somebody up front.
What they say, it's like a science fair.
It's like a science
where
fair.
you go from place to
Very
place, you
hands-on.
learn about
The little
things.
dots on it,
It's
yeah.
all
Yes.
very visual.
People
And-
who attend will be very engaged in what they're showing you.
They did mention last night that it was very helpful that they had all these plans we had done over the last 2 years, because they didn't have to do that work, so they could just absorb them and then start moving forward with their own research.
No, exactly. And if you haven't gone on the city's website and answered the little questionnaire that's available online, I'd encourage you to do that. And if you don't think you'll have time to do that, then ask this woman over here for her 2-question survey, which, literally distills it down to, what do you like and what would you change? And as much input as possible is really encouraged. So if you have the time, I'd encourage you to go online. All right. So we'll look forward next month to having some type of recommendation, probably consistent with your observations already. All right, Ben, can you update us on the chamber?
We are ramping up for a busy fall. We have things coming more later in the fall. Things Restaurant Week comes to mind. That is signups are going on now. So that's a November event, and we have our annual awards shortly after that. So kind of a build-up period right now after a successful Street Life that dodged some rainstorms in August. So we're happy about that. Couple things I want to call attention to. Catapult, the Young Professionals organization for the Seacoast, has their annual awards, the 10 to Watch Awards. Those nominations are open, so if you know of young professionals that are worthy of some recognition, please go ahead and nominate them. They recognize 20 every year, and then there's like a top 10 that get a little extra boost of recognition. So please go ahead and do that. I think this is the one time where it's 40 and under is considered young. But other than that, they're pretty flexible. And then from a tourism standpoint, we heard from a lot of folks that Labor Day weekend was very, very strong for Portsmouth. A lot of people out, so that was a nice little end of summer boost, and people felt really good about that. Outside of that, reports are kind of up and down. Some people are doing really well. Some people are having, like a really strong Tuesday and a really slow Saturday, and it sort of seems to be fairly random as to how that happens. And I'm not sure anyone can really figure out why that is. I think a recent meeting we talked about New Hampshire Life Sciences and their push to do more events and things here in Portsmouth and help us with that industry sector. And I just want to highlight that they do have an event coming up on the 24th at the venue at Port Rock Place, New Hampshire Life Science event that'll be there. They're hosting another event later in the fall at Lonza. So we've entered into a partnership with the first chamber in the state to join New Hampshire Life Sciences as an organization, and really proud of that relationship that we're building with them, and I look forward to that. The only other thing I will mention is on October 14th, the BIA, the statewide chamber, is hosting a input session at Pease at the airport for business leaders that want to share their struggles and concerns so that they can learn how to best advocate for them. That would be a really interesting conversation to listen to. If you're interested in that, please let me know and I can make sure you get an invite to that. It's on the 14th, the morning of the 14th, at October 14th at Pease. Other than that, let's hope for clear skies for this weekend for a great air show. And that's all I have to share.
Right?
Oh, Art Around Town is always the same day as this meeting, so that's a standard thing, standing thing. Art Around Town is tonight. Enjoy.
And
Do you have any season-long thing from American Cruise Lines? How did they do?
They're still going, I believe.
They're
Still going, yeah. Sean's had some good
They've
back
got-
and forth communication with
They've
them.
had 5 visits, mostly on Saturdays. They have 5 more to go. No problems, not a lot of feedback either. They're not the most communicative.
Yeah. Seem-
Operating your business.
Yep, doing their thing.
Invisible when they're here.
Yeah.
We don't really know.
Outside of a tour bus.
Fine,
driving
that's
around.
positive.
I mean, I think it's a marketing channel. I think it's a way for people to come here and say, "Oh my God, I had no idea," and come back or tell their friends. And I think I mentioned this to the group, but the Port Authority is trying to secure a second cruise line to visit. So they like it and they want to expand it.
Ben, I have a question for you. This may be premature, but as your locals is for downtown is for the locals initiative started developing anything yet, or?
Yeah, we've had a really great first meeting with that group. That was a couple weeks ago now, and we need to circle them together again. That group's gonna kind of split into a couple different areas. One group's gonna do some surveying and starting to understand what those barriers are and how do we overcome them. Another group is going to do some analysis of other communities that have wrestled with a similar situation of this and see if there's any lessons that can be learned there. So we're going to kind of be a little behind the scenes for a bit and doing some research and homework so that we can then, once we understand the concerns and challenges, then we can start figuring out how do we adjust that and how do we influence behavior to deal with that. So that's where that group is at currently.
Did the social distancing concept come up in that discussion at all?
I don't think it has. I mean, I think that's that could potentially be part of a solution that could bring folks downtown. It depends on how that's implemented. I think there's a lot of local sentiment that if it turns into a New Orleans or something like that, then they probably won't want to come downtown. But if it's you can have a glass of wine and enjoy the Summer in the Street concerts, that may be a whole different ballgame. It really depends on what comes out of that process.
Great. Thank you very much. Would you like to tell us what the city council is doing?
Sure. So at our last meeting, we got an update from the Sustainability Committee, from their chairs of kind of some of the stuff that they've been doing over the last year, and a few of their proposals for the CIP. On that note, residents, the deadline is
Deadline for a resident or citizen or committee request in the CIP is September 19th, so 2 weeks from today.
So if you or this committee has any requests for the CIP, we ask that you submit them. We have been working very diligently, if you've been paying attention, on some of the zoning changes over in the Hill, Hanover, Rock Street. It was kind of in, I believe, 2019, residents from that area came forth to the council at that time in the city, looking to try to change some of the zoning there, as the redevelopment of the Heineman and kind of that area had started. I think due to COVID, that kind of fell to the back channel, and now we're trying to make sure that residents feel heard, but also property owners. So we changed some of the grading from 45 feet to 40 feet for some of the remaining lots that could be developed in that area. There was no clear consensus with that, so we kind of went back and forth because there were a couple property owners that kind of abut the Foundry lot that said, if they got to develop, we would like to retain the right to develop our property. So we tried to find, through Councilor Monroe and some planning board recommendations, tried to find kind of a happy medium between the two, where as we transition, I think we, at least in my opinion, we understand that the North End incentive has worked. So now there's a conversation of, that was kind of labeled, that part of town was labeled as a downtown overlay, and, is it as actually downtown, or is it more the transitional into residential? So that was one of the big things that have happened over the last week. It took a few months of meetings. We had National Service Dog Month, so we had, if you've not met our comfort dog Mason at the police department, he's quite lovely. It hopefully goes without mentioning, but this is an election year, and so the filing period is open until the 16th. So please go see City Clerk Kelly Barnaby if you're interested. And then, as I mentioned, we have the capital improvement plan kickoff. A big vote that we had is that we voted to authorize the city manager to enter an agreement with the Granite State YMCA to provide after-school child care services to families in the city. The Granite YMCA does this all over the state in multiple communities. And so, as we've heard from people, after-school care and the change of some of the federal guidelines of some of the programs that have been in place really left us families stranded, and we felt like this was a good partnership, good use of space. And again, they are very tried and true and have done this. I mean, the city manager could talk about it more. They've done this all over the state, well-established programming. What else? I feel like that kind of really covers all of the big things from the last meeting. Really, the Rock Street and the overlay district has taken a lot of the last couple meetings.
If I can add on to what is going on Monday night, not only will the council be taking up if social districts should be on the ballot, they'll also be asked if we want to opt out of or prohibit Keno and games of chance. So typically, the ask has been, do you want to do Keno? Now it's, do you not want to do Keno?
Yes, the legislation as of October, right? Is it?
Think so?
Yeah, I think it's October. There's a legislation statewide that allows Keno. As we know, for the last few years, it's been on the ballot. It's gotten closer. I think we were just discussing that. I think the last election was within 150, 200 votes. But as we've talked about today, Concord has now enabled legislation that just allows it. So we as a community now have to opt out if we want to. So that vote will be coming to the ballot also, ideally, as we discuss it on
So
Monday.
that's a vote of the population, not of the city council.
Correct. The city council could decline to put it on the ballot, and therefore then we're just in. So there would, ideally, if you have a strong opinion either way, you would come to the council and let us know on Monday.
Interesting.
Yes. Oh, also very, very fun. And today, yesterday we met with the mayor of Nichiman, our sister city, to celebrate the treaty. So they are here and some of their councilmen, and they're also their assistant mayor. So we exchanged gifts yesterday, and then today at 3:15 will be the ringing of the bell to celebrate the treaty. Senator Jean Shaheen, I think, and Representative Maggie Goodland are expected to be there. And so it was really fun to meet them and to hear their excitement. It was fun to be with the mayor while he was explaining to them that his aunt was mayor when the sister city was established 40 years ago. And it was yeah, so it's really cool. I would say it's a little bit of a wrist jangling for those few minutes. Yes, but go downtown at 3:15, right outside of Piscataqua Bank.
The plaque, right? That's
Yep,
where
the plaque is right there. So that will be today at 3:15.
It's the 120th year of the signing of the peace treaty and the 40th year of having established a sister city.
So I'm waiting for us to get sent there. Fun.
You may go.
High school kids go.
Well, they said so.
All right, any other questions on the city report?
I do have a question.
Any
about
new
childcare.
business?
Yeah.
Okay, there's nobody in the public, so we will not be having public comment, and I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Bob, second?
Sure.
Well, I think she beat you by a half second. All right, all in favor, okay, by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you very much.